is get to know the people around your table a little bit. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to assign a timekeeper, and you're going to spend 30 seconds telling the people around the table who you are, what you do, and what you hope to gain from this conference. 30 seconds. That's it. 30 seconds. So, ready? Go. Assign a timekeeper and go around the room. Go around the table.
Message queued up, so we'll just have that. Just play his message first.
Okay, let me just finish this. This is 3 minutes. I know. Oh, no, you skipped. Just queue up. Oh, you skipped it accidentally. It wasn't ready. That's all right. Just jump on to great.
You'll be another SME tomorrow.
We made it up.
How are we doing? We just about there? Just about there, you guys? Okay. You guys, everybody?
Get the deputy mayor on stage as soon as possible. He's got to go to another event.
Yeah. Let me just finish this and I'll get him up, okay? Okay. Okay, with a show of hands. Thank you. Everybody done? Good? Good? Okay, with a show of hands. How many people here did this in French? Anybody? French. Nobody? Nobody did it in French. How many did it in Russian? Anybody do it in Russian? Nobody? English. Most people were English, right? We did it in English. So there was a point to that exercise. Language is a unifying event. It's a unifying characteristic. You just created a community, and you can only create that community through a common language. You wouldn't have had that conversation. You wouldn't have shared this interaction without a common language. And we happen to use English. Everybody figured out. I guess because we're at SC, we used English. So, let me ask you another question. Everybody had a timekeeper, right? We had a timekeeper? People didn't have timekeepers? My God. Okay, so some people didn't have a timekeeper. How many people had a timekeeper and they kept it to 30 seconds? Okay. Anybody had a loosey-goosey timekeeper, let you go over 10 seconds because they're nice? Of course. Jeff let them go over. He's a Democrat. He's can't stay with the rules. He's okay. Okay, just wrong. Okay. So, in 3 minutes, we established a community, and we established cultural norms. And this is critical. The establishment of a community and the establishment of cultural norms. This is the basics. You know, we think about supply chain and we think about all kinds of stuff. But at the basis of this is a common community of interests and a common language. So the reason I took you through this, not only did I want you to get to know each other a little bit, but in 4 minutes, we established a common language. In 4 minutes, we set cultural expectations across a spectrum of stakeholders. You didn't know any of these people. They're all from different industries, and we established a common culture amongst stakeholders. We began, in a very small way, to understand one another. Without a common language, without common cultural norms, we can't understand one another. Until we establish a sense of community, we will continue to experience systemic friction. It's just a natural thing. I've spent my life in systems development and reorganizing systems, and I gotta tell you, without this collaboration and without this sense of community, you will have systemic friction. So what we're about today and Saturday and Sunday is beginning to break down those barriers. This for you all here who are data people, this is a heavy burden. You are the shaman of our industry, really. You hold those cultural norms and that language at your fingertips, because the language of the supply chain is what? The language of the supply chain is data. So we have to have commonality, and that's why what you do is so important. Friction in any system produces unintended consequences. Inefficient use of infrastructure, inefficient use of labor, lost economics, and environmental hazards. We need to work away from friction. We need to work towards collaboration and seamlessness. Our job, from a systems perspective, from a design perspective, from what I've seen in 4 or 5 different industries that I've been involved in, friction is almost always bad. It almost always produces unintended consequences. Our job is to reduce systems costs, making our economy more vibrant. If successful, we'll create more jobs. If successful, we'll reduce environmental hazards. If successful, we'll save money. And we'll create a win-win for everyone. So I just wanted to sort of put it in perspective how important what you're doing is to the global system and certainly the system here nationally. Okay, So Gene has shared with me that the deputy mayor is here, and he's on a limited, he's got a limited window. So Gene, do you want to introduce him? Why don't we do that?
Sure. I'd like to introduce to you the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development under Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, Ray Chan.
Jonathan, just want to let you know that just now I did my self-introduction in Chinese, and it seems that everyone around the table completely confused. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is fair to say that the LA economy has been going pretty strong for the past 3 years. For example, the number of tourists has jumped from 42 million a year to 47 million. 12% increase. Number of air passengers jumped from 67 million to 75 million per year, another 12% increase. Then the number of building permits jumped from 138,000 permits per year to 168,000, almost a 30% increase. Now, the only economic indicator that dropped is the unemployment rate, reduced from 10% to 5%. And under the Mayor Garcetti's administration, we have created 127,000 net new jobs. One of the reasons that we're doing so well is because LA is the largest trade gateway in the Western Hemisphere. For example, we call ourselves the Western Trade Capital of the United States, the Eastern Trade Capital of Pacific Rim, the Northern Trade Capital of Latin America, and also the Southern Capital of Canada. So in summary, actually, LA is the International Trade Center of America. Now, looking back in year 2006, that's the best export and import year. Some of us may think that that may never come back again. But that is not true. Just last month, the Port of Los Angeles has moved over 814,000 containers. The reason that we could do that is because of the seamless cooperation, partnerships among our terminals, our workforces, the railroad companies, the trucking companies, and also other supply chain partners. Now, we're very, very proud of that, and let's give them a round of applause. Based on our projection, this year, the Port of Los Angeles is going to move a total of 8.5 million containers, which will level with the peak in 2006. Now, but we think we could do more. Hopefully, we think that in the future, we could do approximately 14 million containers. That's what Gene said that, I'm just quoting him, okay? So when we didn't do that, put the blame on him. Actually, let me just tell you about Gene a little bit. So everybody, praises Gene just now, and I have to tell you, I'm new to the import and export, and Gene has been my teacher, I've been his student, and definitely he is one of the 3 best general managers in the city of Los Angeles. Well, we're still thinking of who the other 2 are. Anyway, okay. Well, let's give him a round of applause. Let's talk about the 14 million containers. It is very difficult to achieve, but it is not impossible. It really can be done if there are transformational changes in infrastructures, in technology, in human capital, and also sustainability. Then that's why we're here today. We're here today, ladies and gentlemen, because we want to further eliminate differences, further foster cooperation among ourselves, and also at the same time further strengthen our partnership so that we can be more efficient, more effective, and then at the same time be more profitable. We want LA to be the international trade center, not just of America, but of the world. Now, one more good news is that Mayor Garcetti totally is aware of the importance of import and export. So last month, he kicked off an export program. So we are expanding our international trade team. We will outreach to manufacturers in the following sectors like clean tech, green tech, biotech, some manufacturing companies, and also as well aerospace. We will reach out to them. We will invite them, proactively invite them to seminars, receptions, and also workshops to try to raise the interest to do export, and at the same time to give them the education about export. On the other hand, we'll try to locate global market for them, and then we'll have a lot of trade tools to take these manufacturers to bring the LA goods and business to other places around the world to do some business matchmaking. So we are very, very excited about it. So ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this. The best year for import and export is yet to come. And together, let's make LA the international trade center of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's actually now hear the message from Dean Jim Ellis for Marshall School of Business.
Good morning. My name is Jim Ellis. I'm the Dean of the USC Marshall School of Business, and unfortunately I can't be with you this morning, but I wanted to welcome you to the USC campus and to our Supply Chain Digital Transformation Conference. This is a very important piece of business for us. It's important to our global supply chain management program. It's important to the City of Los Angeles, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, as well as Department of Commerce. And we are so happy, number one, to partner with all those entities, but secondly, to be a host today here on campus. It's great to have you all here. I trust you will have a very thought-provoking and enjoyable day, and as we say here at USC, fight on.
Let's give a round of applause to Jim Ellis, even though he's not here. He's an incredible leader and supporter of what we're doing here in supply chain area. Without further ado, let me actually introduce two key stakeholders that when we initiated between Jonathan Klipkade from the performance team and both port, Gene Seroka and Noel Hacegaba from Port of Long Beach really came up together about creating a shared vision of driving the port optimization in various different dimensions. So I'd like to welcome both Gene and Noel to the stage for just a few remarks, and then we're going to get back on track, and I promise you we're going to end the event on time. So Gene and Noel, please come on up. Okay, Noel, come on up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Nick, for the marching band. It was warm to my heart, just in time for Rivalry Week. But on behalf of the Port of Long Beach, we're just pleased and delighted to be part of this program and to be part of this weekend. Certainly, we've been cooperating with the Port of Los Angeles for a long, long time. Gene and Commissioner Renwick were with us last night as we approved the latest iteration of the CAP program. So our collaboration goes back many, many, many decades. But the collaboration that we're working on today, as it relates to the supply chain, is perhaps the most important, and that's what brings us here today. And here's the bottom line. If we want to improve the movement of cargo, we have to improve the speed of data, right? If we want to improve speed in the movement of cargo, we have to speed up data. And that's why we're here. When we were doing the introductions here on our table, one of the gentlemen, Mark Hertzel, said that what he hopes to achieve this weekend is to see the baby be born, because this discussion has been taking place for many, many years, but we're finally here. And we want to thank the Department of Commerce, we want to thank USC, the Port of Los Angeles, and all of our stakeholders who have met at least 60 to 65 times in having discussions about optimizing the supply chain. So again, on behalf of the Port of Long Beach, thank you for your participation. We look forward to working with you, and we look forward to a very successful conference and weekend. Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
My name is Gene Seroka. I'm the Executive Director at the Port of Los Angeles. And like others who spoke, including Jonathan and Nick, I am fairly new to government as well. After spending 26 years in the private sector under the tutelage of Ron Widows at APL, a lot of this is new to me. But we learn as we go. February 17th, 2015. That was the day that I had the privilege of meeting Secretary Pritzker in San Francisco as Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, United States Secretary of Labor Tom Perez, and I attempted to work with the International Longshore Workers Union and the Pacific Maritime Association to bring together an agreement for work here on our waterfront. The two secretaries mentioned to me after their success in reaching completion of that agreement that they'd like to keep up with us, and they'd like to stay close to the work at the ports, and they kept their word. To this moment, those two friends are only a text away, and although we saw the remarks from Secretary Pritzker, I can tell you firsthand, after being nominated to her advisory committee on supply chain competitiveness and the other work that we have done with Secretary Perez, these two folks have had their best work at hand in assisting us with our supply chain and competitiveness. It's well known that our economy is made up of what you and I do, consumer spending. But according to former U.S. Secretary of Commerce and U.S. Trade Representative Mickey Cantor, who is also an Angelino, 1/3 of our economy is based on import, export, and foreign exchange. Jobs related to export, on average, pay 13 to 17% more than other competitive jobs in our nation, according to Secretary Perez. And all that work continues to funnel through the gateway here in Southern California of the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. We are really at an inflection point, and the advent of the United States 21st century port is right here before us. What a week. On Monday, we announced that we broke the record for throughput at a container port in the Western Hemisphere. On Tuesday morning at 07:15, President and CEO of General Electric Transportation, Jamie Miller, put out a press release to announce the first ever collaboration with the Port of Los Angeles on digitizing the supply chain. Wednesday in San Francisco, we attended with 3,000 other delegates, Minds and Machines. Yesterday, we had our press conference here in LA, a local board meeting and a joint board meeting for the first time in 10 years between the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles to recognize the third iteration of our Clean Air Action Plan. And today we start with USC and under Nick's leadership, along with Jonathan, the beginning of our first ever hackathon, which was a vision of Secretary Pritzker. We also announced yesterday, as we begin our pilot with GE Transportation on digitizing the supply chain in partnership with USC and others, that the world's largest shipping line, Maersk Liner, has joined us in that pilot. Al Gephardt, thank you very much. And joining Al and Maersk Line is our flagship terminal, Pier 400, AP Moeller Terminals, who will also be participating in this pilot of sharing information across stakeholder groups and the user discovery sessions, the focus groups, and all this information that we received was not just one shining light, it was the voice of our customer, the cargo owner, and those whose cargo traverses our port that touches each one of our 435 congressional districts in the United States. So as we move forward today, there'll be a lot of discussion, a lot of networking, and a lot of output, we hope. And having the hackathon over the weekend with the leadership of Jeff Musson and others, we think that we can come up with some great ideas, but this is only the beginning. We've gotten a lot of traction in the supply chain, a lot of interest, and people that want to know what we're doing and give us some advice, and we encourage that throughout the course of the weekend. I thank you all for attending, and I would like to recognize Vice President of our Board of Harbor Commissioners at the Port of Los Angeles, Dave Arian, and Harbor Commission Board Member Ann Redwink. Thank you and enjoy the day.
Well, we've switched up the schedule a little bit, but so Nick, what's next to the panel, right?
You want me to take it off?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are, our first featured speaker is going to talk about an incredible leading technology initiatives that IBM, and I'm sure you know what IBM is doing, right? So it is my pleasure to welcome Rob Allen, a principal of supply chain transformation at IBM, to enlighten us about Watson initiative and other supply chain related initiatives this morning. Let's give a round of applause to Rob Allen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Good morning. I have to start my presentation with just my heart rate is still very high over that marching band. And there's a story that goes with this, Jonathan. I actually, and you may not believe this, but it's true. I can't stand in front of this many people and tell pure fiction. I marched at the University of Florida Fighting Gator marching band for 4 years, and I carried a tuba, and it paid for my college education with a music scholarship that was less than the third place award to your hackathon, which 4 years of college education, that's aging me a little bit, isn't it, Jonathan? But as a freshman coming into the Florida Gator Fighting marching band, I had to carry the steel tuba, where everybody else got to carry the fiberglass. 145-pound kid in front of 80,000 screaming fans, blowing. You know, when you play the tuba, you have to use a little bit of lung capacity. And when you're sitting there and you're looking up at 80,000 people, there were some really strange things that happened with the freshman tuba players at the Florida Gator marching band. I was watching that guy carefully. He did not do what I did at my first game against actually, University of Southern California.
Who won?
University of Southern California. We got you back, though. Anyway, John Robinson was a coach. He wasn't as good as McKay, obviously. But so my introductions, I actually think I need to find the clipper here. Make sure I can do this. Yes, I can. All right. I think it's important to share a little bit of context about what you're about to hear. I was listening with fascination the introductions because IBM has been investing significantly in the digitization of the supply chain. And I want to tell you some of the things that we're seeing, and every one of the charts that I'll share, I'll allude to what the value of a common platform would be. Because my background, I actually was the guy that was in our consulting division for a few years trying to sell supply chain solutions to about 150 different clients. And so I'm not the sales guy. I was the guy that they bring in as a solution architect. I don't know if that term resonates. IBM has some very unique terms. I'll try to minimize the IBM terminology throughout the next 15 minutes. I think Nick told me I only have 15 minutes, so I'm shrinking to get you back on agenda. The solution architect is what I do, and what I found is the term that Jonathan kept bringing up, friction, is our biggest challenge was breaking down that friction between the different systems of records. So we would come in to a client and they'd have an ERP, they'd have a logistics tracking system, they would have an order management system, and I was the guy that was supposed to figure out a way to make those things talk effectively. And so that's what my core foundation was in supply chain. And recently they moved me out of that when I got tired of the 364 days of travel per year and got into a job where the chief supply chain officer at IBM wanted to come up with a single source of truth using the best technology possible to break down the barriers between her towers in the IBM supply chain. We have an $82 billion supply chain, and each of the towers were managing their silos very effectively, and they were sub-optimizing by doing their piece of the pie effectively, and they were sub-optimizing the rest of the supply chain. So they brought me in to implement a solution we call the transparent supply chain. We use some technology you're going to hear about now, and after 2.5 years successful implementation, now I'm in the cognitive engagement group where we are announcing a new division called Watson Supply Chain, and you're going to hear about that. And you're absolutely no sales whatsoever. It's more, I want to share our technology. I loved what Secretary Pritzker said about we are in a race with the rest of the world, and IBM would very much like to be part of us succeeding in winning that race of digitizing the supply chain. So with that, here's what I have planned. I'm looking through the chandelier at the slide. So it's kind of a cool, it's a great effect, actually. I love that. Step back. I'm going to start with supply chain challenges, and I'm going to zip through that because I'm looking around the room and knowing that you guys already know that at least as good as I do. And then innovation focus areas, I have 3 or 4 that we have learned a lot about. Haven't mastered them, but we think we've made some progress. I'd like to share that and how that relates to the challenge of this conference. And then 2 slides on IBM supply chain experience. Yeah, this way better than that one. So this is a picture I love to see. We usually start every pitch with this I love the look on the guy with the bicycle. It sort of looks like he's the guy that caused that, and he's trying to escape. But it's just the common thing about supply chains that all of you know is it's very easy to run a supply chain when everything's going business as usual. It's the disruptions that create the havoc. And so those disruptions are what we are using technology to try to, first of all, predict, anticipate, hopefully prevent. But if they do happen, which we know, a lot of the disruptions you're going to hear about in the next 5 minutes are things you can't possibly prevent. They're going to happen. How fast you respond to those, how much data you have in your hands to make the right decision to that's what we're all about. So it's all about here's some of the things that the decisions that we have to make in supply chain. In the IBM supply chain, we typically get into forecast, substitute parts, quality issues, customers give this spike of demand. We have to switch our shipping lanes. These are all the types of things that the decisions we have to make. What in IBM supply chain, our goal was to get the information in the hands of the user that has learned from the previous events. So we're trying to not just deal with these one by one, but with each event, we're using some machine learning that you're about to hear about to get better and better at how to learn from each event. I like this chart because it's also one of the things that's creating the challenge that we're seeing at IBM. That Uber, upper left, I had an experience with Uber coming from the airport last night. The gentleman that I hired when he found out I was from North Carolina, I think he decided that I was personally responsible for the state of North Carolina endorsing the Republican candidate for the United States. I did everything possible to communicate to him I was not personally responsible. I was not the guy that led the fundraising in North Carolina. I actually sent 2 kids to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is the second most liberal university in the United States to which school do you think? Yeah, there you go. It's the second most liberal. So I did my part to create a liberal environment in the state of North Carolina. But the Uber driver decided that I was personally responsible and was very upset about it. He took a circuitous route from the airport to the Radisson. What these companies are teaching us is you look at Airbnb and Facebook, Alibaba, there's a new paradigm on how you run a supply chain. And IBM's trying to learn from that and enable the technology that I think is absolutely critical to the challenges I'm hearing about at this conference to help enable a solution. So the distribution is fueled by 3 forces: proliferation of different types of data. Part of what I was trying to explain is I'm not necessarily the sales guy. I'm not the data scientist. I'm the solution architect. We have an army of data scientists that are helping us to develop these solutions. So what we're seeing is unstructured and structured data. One of the things I'd like to talk about is how IBM's trying to help solve that problem, both structured and unstructured data. We're seeing this ability to build business and code with the API economy. The API economy is something that is now we are preaching every time we go out to a future client or come up with a solution. We're trying to make sure we have the ability to integrate the data. Cognitive computing is also driving some of this. And I have this chart just to show some of the things that have been our experiences. We started with streamlined global processes. We went to smarter, transparent supply chain. That second box is where we landed a year and a half ago. And now we're moving into cognitive capabilities. We want to learn. We want to have an agile IoT type experience. We'll talk more about that. Data-driven, digitally executed, and you'll hear blockchain. I have one slide on that because that's one of the technologies that IBM has decided is a game changer. We're investing heavily in that. We'll talk more about that in one chart, but I know there's a whole panel on that. I won't dwell on it, but big data and IoT, I use this graphic just to start the discussion of what we're learning about IoT. When you pull data is actually the driver for getting information to help streamline processes. And so this chart shows the output of what we're trying to do is grab data and acquire as much data as possible. We're using weather data. We're using the RFID components to try to build sensors throughout our supply chain so we can answer the questions, where's my stuff? If it's late, if it's not where it's supposed to be, we can immediately apply Watson in our analytics to help address what to do with that. Alerting is one of the things that our customer at IBM and a lot of our clients are saying, if you can compare if the part is not where it's supposed to be, or if you build some analytics and predict based on what you've learned about its route, it will take longer to get where it's supposed to be than it should, then we're going to alert you that it's running a little late. So we're coming up with the ability to track any component. We're not actually tracking every single part that goes into our power systems, but we're tracking critical parts. And if we look at the route that it's on and it's showing up late, we're going to be able to alert that. I like this graphic because we're starting to proliferate the amount of data on all the stuff that's going on throughout our supply chain. And we're using the term precision logistics to start applying some analytics to say, if we know exactly where everything is, and starting to apply some clever predictions and inform our customers, if it's not going to get where it wants to be, we're going to let them know. I'm going to introduce Watson, and I'm hoping that this is something that the millions and millions of dollars that IBM spent on Watson pays off a little bit, because we have hired marketing firms. We had a World Watson event in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, 17,000 people coming, and we've decided, IBM's thinking this is the game changer. Having machine learning, artificial intelligence, Watson's capability for supply chain is off the charts. It's an amazing fit for what Watson can do, and we like to just propose that as something that should be at least a consideration for any data challenge. And it started with healthcare. If you saw the 60-minute special, that's where a brilliant application of matching clinical trials and patients with what attributes they needed to line up. That's where that was successful, and we're looking at other use cases. And supply chain, I talked to the lead for Watson in the Watson deployment, and he was looking at our supply chain ideas, and he said, supply chain is like a candy store for Watson. It's like all the data you have available, and if you try to use classic analytics, it's very hard to pull out the information you want. But using an adaptive learning vehicle like Watson, it can start generating the insights that were very difficult to pull out. And we've got about 15 use cases that we've used in IBM. We're starting to offer this as a potential solution. We'll talk more about some of that in just a minute. But what are the things about the three capabilities of a cognitive system: understanding, reasoning? The learning part is where we're starting to really get some differentiation. What we have now is whenever there's an event in the supply chain, we create a digital playbook. The folks that need to handle that, they track and put into our collaboration platform, here's how I handled it. Watson comes into that, and it's reading through all the unstructured data that is in those collaboration platforms, and it's starting to learn. With each event, Watson gets smarter and smarter. And so when you have any kind of issue or disruption in your supply chain, you look back and say, when was the last disruption we had that was associated with this part being held up. We'll go back and say, look at that part number, and it says, here's the 5 events, here's who participated, you invite the same person, and they help make the right decision to close it. It's a great, simple first step to helping to apply Watson and cognitive. Hurricane Matthew, this is another thing that we're using Watson. Watson Explorer is one of our APIs that is using weather company data, and it's predicting the track of the hurricane. It's putting that, with all the weather company data, we can now overlay that over our supplier or our carriers and start giving some alerts to say, I know that these carriers or this route will be affected, and it will predict that and anticipate it and offer some alternatives. So we're trying to apply Watson to scan through all this social media data and the weather company data and tell the users and practitioners in advance what you need to do to take action or what are some alternatives. And here's where Watson's coming into our collaboration platform. I just have this is an actual real use case where they were responding to an earthquake, and we were asking Watson, what's some of the action, and Watson was scanning through it and pulling some information. It's a real use case to start pulling some information. So this technology has so much capability. Blockchain, I'm going to leave that to make up time. I just want to let you know, IBM, it has these several use cases. We just had a summit meeting to start to investigate some capabilities. How does this complement or augment the ASNs and EDI 856? That's a very big play for IBM. We see that if you don't get into the blockchain world, we're trying to be on the front edge of that. And my last 2 charts, I just want to comment on IBM supply chain. We manufacture power systems, mainframes, server storage. And one of the things that we just announced, this Watson supply chain announcement, is we decided that this is something that we want to aggressively develop a leadership place. And Harriet Green, the general manager, views Watson as one of those tools that help us to solve problems often before they arise, or if they do happen, we can immediately know how to take action. My boss's boss, Jeanette Barlow, is when you can anticipate small disruptions in your supply chain, you become agile and resistant. We're coming up with this offering that tries to get the digitization of the supply chain and practice it, improve the way we respond to supply chain incidents. This is our product that we're developing. It just has a map to track events, link it to the delivery impact and the revenue impact. Just the information you have in that chart, that would have taken us days to create, and now having Watson being able to track through, pull the information out of the structured and unstructured data and give you this type of information, we think this is going to be a game changer for the supply chain. So I zipped through that. The technologies I focus on are primarily Watson, blockchain, and big data and analytics. Those are the things we're trying to apply. And I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope they made up a little bit of time, but we're very excited about participating in this. We think there's tremendous opportunity.
Let's take some questions.
Sure, I can take a couple questions. Yes, sir.
Why does the cognitive system allow you to accumulate data, very rapidly, which used to take days to accumulate?
One of the advantages of Watson is if you compare it with like an
Could you repeat the question?
Okay. The question was, what is the difference with a cognitive analytics solution versus, what are the inherent advantages between that and basic analytics? And what we're learning is the machine learning, the ability for Watson to get smarter and smarter with, you offer feedback to it. So one of the APIs that we're trying out is Watson Q&A. If Watson offers an answer, when you say, what action should I take in response to this delay disruption at my port? It comes back and it says, well, here's, based on previous experiences, this is the action you should take. If the answer comes back, there's this adaptive learning where the practitioner receives that, you offer comments on it, and it starts to learn and say, wait, I'll go to this source next time. So there's this adaptive learning component of it. It also has the ability to sense, not just exact word pairs, but to look for context. That's an important development that was very useful in healthcare. It'll look through and say, if you say, I'm just looking for this part number, it will look for something close and look for the context to actually improve the sensing of the data to pull into it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned blockchain. You mentioned blockchain. I was wondering, blockchain is going to be more like a vehicle for digital assets. So how do you see blockchain enabling the cognitive computing supply chain?
You know, at our summit meeting, I think I have one of my colleagues here. Yes, thank you. I might just defer to the panel for that, because the linkage between cognitive computing and blockchain, we're still sorting out. Where we are with blockchain is we're just developing some use cases, and we're starting to test what would make sense, what's the best. There's 100 different ways we could take blockchain, and so far the alignment with where does Watson fit into that, I don't think we're there yet, unless you'd like to.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Let's save it for the panel.
We're going to take baby steps, and let's defer that one to the panel. Thanks. Any other questions?
Just very quickly, do you have some examples of...
David?
Hi, sorry, just very quickly, do you have some examples of some of the structured as well as unstructured data that you pull from?
The structured data is all the tables out of an ERP, for instance. So when we go into an SAP, Oracle, Infor, and we go and we look at what's their actual part number, what's the expected arrival date, all those are in tables that we would call structured data. The unstructured data is where it's free form, where we're trying to pull in insights from things like the resolution room or collaboration platform, where it's free form text. We'd go and grab information out of that and say, oh, here's some data that's related to this topic. And Watson is thriving in the ability to go match that unstructured data with the structured data and be able to make some sense out of that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes?
So associated to that data that you deal with, how are you dealing with the interoperability with different systems that you have to interface with?
Say the question one more time.
The interoperability that you have to deal with the different systems that you have to face with as you're pulling out this data?
The big challenge for us, and just as I mentioned, when we go out to talk to different clients, they all have different setups. I haven't met one that it's like, oh, this is exactly like that last week's client. They're all very disparate in how they handle order management, their logistics network, their ERPs. So the key is to have some flexibility to that. And when I was thinking about the challenge here of eliminating the friction, this is exactly the area where we are trying to focus, and we'd love some help and ideas, and we have some thoughts on it, is to make some kind of common standard on how we set up the linkage with the EDI, especially with the logistics and the EDI. Huge opportunity, because right now we're having to be very flexible with RESTful APIs. We just go out and say, we're going to give you the instructions, we'll connect with your ERP or with your logistics network, your customer order database. All these things we just have the instructions with the RESTful API, but it would be so much better if there was a common standard to build off of.
So just to follow on, is that a pseudo-custom approach for different interfaces right now that you're working with?
We're looking at, right now, we're having to adjust to the way the world is. So the way the world is, we have to do some very much flexibility, unique. We're going out as a software as a service. We don't want to go on with a 6-month integration project to go get some insights. So that's where we're making it adjustable, flexible to be able to grab that data. Make sense?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.